This is the Kung Fu Life Podcast, episode 36, and I'm your host, Leo. So, where to start with this one? First off, I guess I should mention that I got my first vaccine shot today. My arm's a little sore, but that's all I've experienced so far. And I know different people have different views on the whole vaccines and the whole process. And you know, I guess there's a big anti-vax thing that has been going on for quite some time now. In fact, my sister is actually a big anti-vax person, so you know, and they come up with all these different figures about what can go wrong with vaccines, and I'm not here to preach to anyone to say whether you should take it or whether you shouldn't, but here's what I've noticed. For one, it makes sense to get it if you're at risk. Definitely, if you're at risk, then you should get it, in my opinion. If you're young and healthy, then it's up to you. It's your choice if you want to get it or not. And I don't believe that you should be forced to get it by any way, in any means or anything like that. I mean, that just goes against our core values as Americans, right? We don't want to force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. So, you know, get it if you want to get it. If you don't. But if you're at risk, then it makes sense definitely to do it. And I did it for other reasons. I'm not at risk, but for one, I also don't want to be limited in traveling if that becomes an issue later. Like once things are completely opened up, if people start requiring certain, a vaccination, then I don't want to limit myself in that way. And two, I guess I felt a little bit obligated to do it since I work for a pharmaceutical company. And I should actually tell you guys that, from what I've noticed, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but from what I know about my company and how the vaccine was created and how the other companies are creating the vaccine, it's not that they rushed the process. Not necessarily. I mean, yes, they were trying to speed things up as much as they could, but they didn't, as far as I understand, they did not sacrifice or make any shortcuts necessary. Everybody says, oh, well, they had to have made some shortcuts because prior it would take years to get a vaccine out and approved and out to the public, whereas now they got it out in 9 months or something like that. But that wasn't, they're not looking at the full story. The way they saved a bunch of time was that the pharmaceutical companies put their money at risk, which is why the government gave them money. And what I mean by putting their money at risk is that they immediately started building the manufacturing facilities for those products as soon as they were, or during the clinical phases, which normally during the clinical phases, you would not be building out the manufacturing. You'd wait until you had approval, or at least you were fairly confident that you had approval or were going to get approval. And then you would start building out the facilities needed to create the drug and distribute it and all that. So they put their money at risk because the pharmaceutical companies just started building out right away all the manufacturing facilities, and it led to a cluster. Uh, we'll just leave it at that, cluster, because they were doing this and they didn't have the process of how they were going to create it fully mapped out. Now they knew certain basic pieces of equipment and things that they would need to create it, but a lot of it was a kind of ad hoc planning where they're like, okay, we know this, we need these pieces of equipment, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna go purchase those pieces of equipment and start building out the facilities to contain those pieces of equipment, and so on and so forth. And obviously, typical things that they're gonna need, the utilities, the HVAC systems, and all of that, they were planning. They know what they need there, so they're ordering that and getting that set up and getting whatever demolition they needed to get done to outfit certain facilities, and that's what they were doing. So that's where they really saved the time. Now they also tried to do a whole bunch of different things. With my company, they tried to leverage vendor documentation for the qualification process. And honestly, that didn't really work out that well for us, because we ended up having to go back over it. The vendor documentation wasn't the greatest, and so then we had to redo it. And so it was really, I don't think it saved that much time personally. But, everybody still got things done in an impressive amount of time. But my point is that it wasn't the science behind the vaccine that was rushed, and it wasn't the actual product itself. It was the timelines in creating the manufacturing facilities that were really compressed. And that was really the only way that was that I'm aware of that was done to enable everyone, all the pharmaceutical companies, to get their products out sooner. And of course, there were different things that were done with the vendors, expediting the shipments and all that sort of thing. And there's this whole government program, which at first my company did not have a part in, but the government actually gave priority to certain companies that they gave a bunch of money, like Moderna and Pfizer, and so they forced the vendors to serve those companies first, which in my mind, and this program was called BARDA, and I forget the acronym, what it means. It's like business something, research and development agency or something like that. But anyways, it was a government program to help out businesses. I'm not really sure what that program was started originally for, but it's been in effect. It's been in agency for a while, from what I understand. But my point is, I don't agree that the government could step in and dictate who gets what piece of equipment just because they gave money to that company. That doesn't seem really right to me. But either way, that's how it went down. So there you have it. So it's up to you. If you want to get it, get it. If you don't want to get the vaccine, then don't get it. I don't really have any strong feelings for or against it. So, and for me, I think it made sense for me to get it just because of my circumstances. So there you have it. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight. And I don't know that this is going to be a long podcast. I don't think so. But one of the other things I wanted to mention was because this podcast is coming out late because I've been dealing with a lot of different things over this past week and a half. And it's been tough. It's been really tough. And I won't get into too much about the background of what's been tough for me, just because I don't think that that's particularly useful to anyone. But it's been a really tough week. And, everybody goes through tough weeks. Some are tougher than others. But one of the things that I've always struggled with in my life, or at least for a significant portion of my life, is depression. And I know you may think, oh, what does this really have to do with Kung Fu life and that sort of thing? And I don't want it to seem like it is kind of a therapeutic thing for me to talk about it and for me to release a podcast about it. But it's still, to me, this is my life. So there's different ideas, I guess, about what Kung Fu life is. And sure, let's just say that there's different opinions on what Kung Fu life is, right? Kung Fu life could be just about Kung Fu, right? You're training, going on trips, training a bunch, spending time with your Sifu, Sigung, whatever, your Kung Fu brothers, sisters, and that's all well and good, and that's true. That is, to me, a part of Kung Fu life, but that is not all-encompassing of Kung Fu life to me. To me, Kung Fu life is everything. And I guess there's a quote from Moya, and I think I have this right, but he says, what is Kung Fu? Kung Fu is life. Well, what is life? Life is everything. And I'm pretty sure that was Moyat. I mean, I know that was Moyat who said that, but I'm pretty sure those are the exact words that he used. And so, to me, that's what Kung Fu life is. It's everything. And in particular, it's everything to every individual. But when you really start talking about Kung Fu life, it's when you start letting Kung Fu into your life and start letting Kung Fu affect the rest of your life, which it does, naturally, it does. But you also have to have been training for a while for that to happen. So typically you will hear about Kung Fu life through your Sifu, and you will experience it through your Sifu or Sigung. And for me, doing this podcast is about my Kung Fu life, and my thought, or my vision, I guess, for the future of this podcast, if it has a future, is to maybe include other people, other Kung Fu family members of mine, if they're interested, and do their own, like on this podcast, do their own episodes, and everybody gets an experience of different people talking about their life and their Kung Fu in particular. Obviously, that's the thing tying everything together. So clearly there would be a focus on that, but they would also talk about their life, and you get to know them as a person as well. But the benefit of sharing my Kung Fu life with you is maybe you get to learn something from what I'm going through that you didn't know, or maybe you get a different view. Maybe you get an understanding of someone else in your life through the difficulties that I face or whatever I'm thinking about or going through. So that's why I wanted to talk about depression on one of these podcasts, and this one ends up being the one. And I thought it relevant because I'm kind of going through one of those episodes in my life. So it was kind of a long-winded explanation into why I'm talking about this, but hopefully that gives you a little background and a little understanding of where I'm trying to come from. And so I guess I've been dealing with depression. And well, let's actually, before I get into that, let's talk about what depression is. Everybody feels sad sometimes. That's not depression. You're not depressed if you just feel sad. Like maybe a relative died or a loved one died. Yeah, you're gonna be sad. That's normal. That is completely and utterly normal. You're not depressed, you're just sad because something bad happened. Or maybe you've been through some traumatic experience. And that may cause some depression. So that may cause some depression. But it may not necessarily be depression. You may just be going through a really tough period in life. And actually, I want to backtrack on that statement. If you went through a traumatic situation, there's a good chance that you're going to be depressed or have some sort of issue there. But what I'm talking about in terms of if you go through something tough in life, you lose your job, whatever, you're not depressed, you're just having a hard time. Depression, the best description, or I guess description or portal into viewing what depression is or understanding what depression is was something I heard from Jordan Peterson. So he put it, and I'm pretty sure, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he put it like this, and when he said this, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So imagine that you are fixing dinner for your family. So you start cooking, it takes a couple hours to cook, to prep and cook and everything. And then as the time starts getting closer, you start setting the table. So you go grab the plates, walk over to the table. On your way to the table, you trip on something. Maybe it's a Lego that your kid left laying around. Or maybe you just trip for no reason. That's probably even a better one. Dishes fall down, shatter, and here's what goes on in a person who's going through or suffers from depression. Here's what happens in their mind. The first feeling, at least for me, would be like beating myself up. Oh, how could I have tripped over this thing? Or how could I have stumbled and just fallen, broken all these dishes? And then you think, oh man, this is gonna cost, whatever money to replace these dishes. Now maybe if your money's tight, you might think, oh, now I can't afford to take my son out tonight for dinner or buy him a toy or whatever this weekend. And now we're not gonna have any plates for dinner. We'll have to eat out of the pot, or maybe if you have paper plates, you have to use paper plates. And you think about how uncoordinated you are, that your Kung Fu is better than this, you shouldn't be dropping these dishes. And all these thoughts are going through your mind. And while all these thoughts are going through your mind, and this is just coming to you in a rush, and you're just feeling it, and it comes into you in such a rush that you don't even remember some of these thoughts but the feeling from those thoughts are left lingering in your mind. And at this point, as you start to sweep up the shattered remains of your life off the floor and put it into the trash can, you smell the dinner burning. The dinner's ruined. Then you go and you start thinking, wow, I can't even provide dinner for my family. I am a worthless individual. I don't deserve to be the father of this child, the husband to this wife, and all these other things. I can't even set the table properly. And this is what goes through a depressed person's mind. And this is every day, every second of the day, all day. And it's terrible. It puts you into a bad state of mind where bad things just continue to happen. And it's because of your state of mind. So that's what it's like. It sucks. It is not pleasant. And it plagues you. It really does. It plagues you. And it has long-lasting consequences. It can have such long-lasting consequences that you are then afraid to cook dinner for your family or cook dinner, period. And all sorts of other deep, deep issues. So here are some of the things that have worked for me anyways. And one of them is medicine. Medicine helps. If you're truly depressed, then medicine can help. Now there's also, there's a bunch of different medicines and they can have different side effects and that sort of thing. But if you are truly depressed, and you really need to make this assessment for yourself, because honestly, a psychiatrist, unless they're a really, really good psychiatrist, they're gonna just give you some medication. If you say, I'm depressed, they're gonna say, okay, here, do you want to do some medication? Do you want to do this medication, whatever? So you really need to understand if you are truly depressed yourself. So you really need to think about that before you just go jumping on some antidepressant. But if you do take an antidepressant, one thing you have to be aware of is that it's going to make you feel different at first. For the first couple days I took it, I felt weird. Like I felt weirdly detached from who I was. But then after I think it was 2 or 3 days, I felt normal. It was like one day I felt really off, and then second day was less off. The third day I think I was good to go. But it changes your personality a little bit as well, but I shouldn't say that. It actually does not change. It didn't change my personality. But you need to be aware of it and see if it works for you. And I know some of them are also very, I think some of them can be addictive. I think most of them are not, though. The one I'm taking is not. But some of them can be, and some of them can lead to different withdrawal symptoms, I guess, and anxiety when you get off of it. But the one I'm on is not supposed to be like that. So I feel okay with it. I've only been doing it for about a year now, almost. So it helps to level you out a bit. Especially if you're someone like me, because when you when you hold in all that stuff then you all those thoughts are constantly going through your mind, and it hurts. And it hurts. But those things are going through your mind on a constant basis. Just going and going and going, day in and day out. And it's hard to break that cycle. So you might need medication. You might not. You might just need to work out. That's the other thing that I found that helps me out quite a bit. Still doesn't help completely, but it helps out quite a bit, is to work out and also avoid sugar. Avoiding sugar causes all sorts of issues. Also causes inflammation in the body, and inflammation in the body can actually lead to depression, because it's actually like your body is getting depressed because of all this inflammation in your joints and in your bones, and then your body is dealing with all this pain, and your body is all connected, and so that pain translates into your brain, and your brain translates that, and you can end up getting depressed from that. So you need to take care of your body. And the like inflammation you get from working out and that sort of thing is different, because for one, it's fleeting, and it also leads to less inflammation later. So overall, the inflammation problem goes away when you're working out. I mean, obviously, sometimes you might have arthritis and you have to deal with certain things like that, but a lot of that can be caused by diet as well. So something to look into if you're dealing with that sort of thing. But what I wanted to say was that when those thoughts are occurring to you day in and day out, you start to suppress certain things, and you try to just push them down, and then and a lot of it ends up being like you get angry, and then you just end up pushing that down. So you get into this habit of pushing the emotions down, like even the depression, you kind of push it down a little bit. But then you get into this habit of pressing all the emotions down, all the bad emotions. So when you get angry, someone says something that you don't agree with, and then you kind of like back off a little bit, and then kind of, just press down that disagreement. And then someone says something that actually pisses you off, and then you still press that down, and you're kind of just smushing all that angst down. And then what ends up happening is you end up exploding and yelling. And I've talked about that in previous podcasts. You should never yell at all. There's no reason to ever yell at anyone other than maybe yourself. Or if you want to, if you're trying to alert someone to a dangerous situation, obviously that's, that type of yelling is okay. But really, you should never yell or raise your voice if you can. That's a very difficult thing for me to do. And part of that is because I do tend to hold in emotions. And you do have to hold it in some of the time, because, you have to operate within the world, and you can't just act like a jackass. So you have to do a little bit of that. But what I've found that helps is when you do disagree with someone, or when you do have like there's something, whenever someone may say something and you just kind of get this feeling, like this sort of wall or this feeling welling up inside, and you're just like, no, that's not right, or, whatever, you need to speak up and you need to say what you want to say. And I found that to be helpful as well. I'm not that great at it, honestly, right now, but I've been actively working on it, and we'll see where it goes. So those are the things. I'm trying to think if I've discovered anything else that helps. There's a bunch of, I'm getting into the Taoist. I'm reading, this is another Taoist book I'm reading, and I got two more over here. But a lot of their things, they have different things about diet, like what you're eating that can cause depression and that sort of thing. And so I'm looking into that as well, because you really are what you eat, and what you want to be is you want to be, well, you can be whatever you want to be, but you don't want to be a Twinkie, okay? Um, so there you have it. I think that's about. I'm trying to think of anything else that would be helpful to mention. I guess the other part of that, and part of my depression, I think, is confidence. And I've talked about that a little bit before. And the only solution that I've seemed to have come across for that is to accomplish something. Do something, discipline yourself is really what it is. During Lent, I did the whole sugar-free thing during Lent, and I wasn't really sure if I could do it, honestly, because I have a serious sweet tooth. I love sweets. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. But I can tell you that as soon as I knew that I was going to be able to do it, and it was maybe I think it was actually 3 weeks. It might have been 2 weeks prior to the end of Lent. I felt this boost. I felt this boost in confidence. And like I felt my mind kind of harden. It felt like my mind kind of like a steel cage kind of dropped around my mind, and I was like, yes, I can control you. And it felt really good. And so I think that the best way to solve any confidence issues is to do something difficult, something that's difficult for you. And so I've also started on this program, this workout program, which is difficult. It's by a man named Jeff Cavaliere. He was a head physical therapist for the New York Mets, and the guy is just super fit, unbelievably fit. Just look up his YouTube videos. He's got a bunch of really good information on his YouTube, and his workout programs, well, the one I'm doing is awesome. It's just a great workout program. I worked in the gym for a while. I worked in the gym for several years in my past, and as a personal trainer, and some of the things that he talks about, I've never heard anybody say in the gym. I've never heard anybody talk about it, and is dealing with issues that I have, like my shoulder issues. It's dealing with those things. He shows you how to do an exercise the proper way, and if you have some sort of an impingement and he describes where the pain is, and goes into detail about what can cause it, and how to work around it or how to solve it. And so it's to me, it's been a really good program. I really like it. I'm gonna keep up with it. I've been doing it for a month now, and it's a 3-month program, and it's pretty cheap. So if you're interested in it, Jeff Cavaliere, athleanx.com is his website. It's cool stuff. It's good information, and it's like I said, it's fairly cheap. So that's always a nice thing. So we'll see. So my plan is to be on a heavy workout routine basically for the rest of my life. So that's another way that I'm trying to develop confidence. And train Kung Fu. Obviously training Kung Fu is good for confidence building. For one, it teaches you to stand straight up, which is also another technique for feeling more confident. But it teaches you to face your problems. And that's what I feel like I'm doing, and what I feel like I'm sharing with this podcast. It's called Do Ying, face your opponent, or facing. I don't think it's actually face. I'm not sure the exact translation. I think the translation is just facing. So face, square up. Face your opponent. And if you apply that to the problems in your life, then you'll solve them. So that's what I think about that. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. And of course, the Richmond anniversary seminar, the 35th anniversary, is coming up in the next couple weeks. Actually, next weekend. Wow. Okay. Yeah, so get to Richmond if you can. If not, then sign up for the Zoom, what do you call it? I guess the Zoom seminar. But make it if you can. And we'll just leave it at that.